Welcome to Theory and Practice,
a podcast dedicated to decoding research in the field of speech-language pathology.
This is Sarah.
And this is John. We're both SLPs delving into research and
equipping you with evidence-based practices and empower you to provide the highest quality care for your clients.
As a disclaimer, this is just our personal opinions and thoughts. It's not meant to misinform or claim the intentions of the literature or publication. We also encourage you to read and interpret the findings independently.
Hi, John.
Hey, Sarah. How are ya?
Hanging in there. It's been a year.
It's been a while. It's been a while. A lot of things happen, right?
Well, I guess so. I mean, like I don't know. So school started.
Yep. I'm doing my fourth year now, fourth year in the doc program. So new school year, new me, I guess.
But first, also, like, I thought you were already like, I mean, this has been like the longest like PhD ever.
Stop, I can't. Yeah.
Like, I thought you were on the 5th, actually. Like, I'm like, what the hell? You still have one more year?
Yep. It's still
never ending.
Still happening. It's still happening. So yeah.
Right.
Well, it seems like everybody's going back to school. You know, I'm back to school, Sarah. You're back to school as an SLP. So I think the topic that we're going to talk about today is very relevant given the time, right? And I just want to share this piece written by María Cioé Peña at University of Pennsylvania, published in the Journal of Critical Study of Communication and Disability. This article is titled, "Not Just a Mother, Not Just One Child, Untangling Parental Engagement for Mothers of Emergent Bilinguals with Disabilities." So this title is a mouthful, but I feel like it's very meaningful as service providers who are serving in the schools.
And I also really like Maria. I think I've never told you this story before, but John, like, I'm such a fan of Maria. Like, I call her by first name as if we're like really close or something. But like, so she has an Instagram account.
Yes.
Right. And I had messaged her and I was like, oh my God, like, I'm sorry I missed you, or like I didn't get to see this and da da da. And then she was like, oh, I had said like, oh, I missed you at that conference, right? And then she was like, well, I'm gonna be at this other conference if you're there. Like, she's just so nice, right? Like, doesn't even know me and just DM me back like that. Like, so nice. So really love Maria as a person too.
No, it's really nice.
Sweet.
As a person who reads Maria's work, I really like how intimate she is. Like kind of said in the first episode of season 1, the distance between the researcher and the researched is very, very close. And also the one thing I want to share about is her researcher positionality. Where does she position herself as a researcher when she's working with these participants, right? So I just want to share a little bit about her positionality. Those of you who has the article, it's on page 20. The author identifies, as a neurodivergent, Afro-Dominican, Spanish, English, bilingual, biliterate immigrant. So after immigrating to the US in the 1990s, I lived in Brooklyn neighborhood of Sunset Park for over 20 years. I was a bilingual education student and later bilingual special education teacher in the community. I attended the same schools as many of the participants' children, attended the same church. Many of the mothers knew people who knew me through these roles. Like the woman in the study, I am also a wife and mother. At the time of the study, I was married, financially dependent on my partner, a full-time student, my toddler's primary caretaker, pregnant with my second child, and living in a neighboring community. Since that time, I have taken on a caretaking responsibility for a parent. While I share many identity markers, past and present, with these mothers, I am different from them in that I have not had any experiences relating to spousal abuse. My children are younger, and my migration concerns are often assuaged by the status as naturalized citizens of the US. And I think she wrote this very beautifully here. Yeah.
And it's just like so intimate. And I feel like her style of writing is also like very intimate like this, right? Like
Mhm.
just really personable. Um, and I also feel like her background story, first of all, like me too. I'm also from New York City, so she's part of New York City Board of Ed, right?
Mhm.
But also I think that like what she described is also very similar to you, John, right? Like
Yeah.
you grew up, you immigrated into SoCal, right? And then like you ended up becoming an SLP. You are also bilingual, biliterate. Then you also service the same community as an SLP, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
it's a so imagine you also like writing a research about like your own life that is reflected within your own community. I mean, that's really special, right?
Yeah. I really appreciated how she used her background, upbringing, her marital status. So all of those personal things are just like kind
Mm-hmm.
of embedded in her work. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what I find her work very special about, compared to other types of literature we've read so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very personable, it's very intimate, and we're able to relate to her. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's really get into this article. So this is about mothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers of emergent bilinguals labeled as disabled. So I think in the article they call it EBLADS, right? Emergent bilinguals labeled as disabled is basically saying these kids are identified or labeled as disabled because they're not able to sufficiently produce, or sufficiently able to speak the English language. Okay, so basically going back to that ultimate question, is it a language difference or disorder? And Maria is saying that these kids are labeled as disordered rather than a difference at this point.
Is it from the bilingual status though?
Bilingual status. Yes, bilingual status. Yeah.
Oh.
Emergent bilinguals. This is what I'm saying. Emergent bilinguals. So they're just learning English, right? But
Uh-huh.
then they're qualifying kids as SLI, not learning disability, but speech and language impairment.
They classified them without doing even a bilingual assessment?
It's the trend. If they don't do the specifics of maybe we should do testing in English, maybe we should do testing in Spanish. If we have an IEP team that is really due diligent with what they're doing, I'm sure the results may be different, but other IEP teams, they'll do what they can.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying that like we're not sure
Right, right,
how
right.
they're classified being classified. Like
Right, but the
the
likelihood of
appropriate bilingual status, like,
right,
okay, assessment.
right,
Okay. Basically, was a dynamic assessment conducted, right? Like
right.
that's okay.
Or did they assess with an interpreter? Like what happened?
I
How
see.
did they end up as speech and language impairment? Or how did they end up in mild mod? Is it really a disorder? Is it really a language difference? They didn't really do the deep investigation. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And one thing about working with families, especially with, families who speak languages other than English, there's you know, I think in the literature they talk about different ways that families engage with the school system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And school teams are kind of like quick to make assumptions about this family or this mother or this kid's mom or this, so there's a lot of things to unpack here about how school teams should really go about when working with families who speak languages other than English. And I think Maria Cioé Peña did a really great job on talking about many facets of parental involvement in the schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although IDEA, I think she talks about it, IDEA states that parents are guaranteed a right to participate within and across aspects of child's educational career, and the Individuals with Disability Education Acts make parental inclusion a mandated and legal obligation,
Mm-hmm.
um, saying that yes, the law really wants parents to be involved, but if the parents aren't available to come to these IEP meetings, if the parents are always absent, or if the parents are always like cannot make it, how is this going to work? I think that's the most important thing that Maria was really going for in this case.
Hmm. And it also like kind of questions like the equity concerns there, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the assumption that it is made when parents cannot show up to IEP meetings, and it's like, well, they're kind of like just absent or they don't care, right?
Yeah.
And so she's putting that in question in this of how like is that the case? How is culture really affecting everything? And also she also does mention like intersectionality, right? So
Right.
maybe we can kind of talk about the intersectionality too, like, but maybe we should actually talk about who she interviewed first. I don't know. How do you want to go?
So, let's see. Let's actually talk about the study, and
Hmm.
then let's talk about the findings, and then we can talk about intersectionality here.
Okay.
So, this study had two specific research questions, right?
Hmm.
And I think those two research questions is how do mothers understand or perceive their role in their children's educational careers? And then the second research question is what factors, if any, impact a mother's capacity to engage in her children's education through traditional means? So traditional means would be like mainstream academic definition of parental engagement. So how do the US education system or IDEA define um, parental engagement? So that's what she was trying to say. What factors, if any, impact a mother's capacity? Okay. So I believe Maria interviewed 10 Latinx mothers who identified as monolingual Spanish users, immigrants, and mothers to children classified by school agents as both English language learners and students with disabilities. Okay. And there were multiple phases. This is one thing I kind of like about her work is that she didn't just interview them once. It was systematically done. So the first phase, all 10 mothers engaged in two semi-structured interviews. And in the second phase, there were three focal participants who with at least three more interview sessions and two home observations and a focus group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these are multiple data points. So think of it like a funnel system. So I'm going to interview 10 mothers for phase one. And then while analyzing those 10 interviews, I narrowed down to three families of interest. That was so fascinating and did follow-up interviews
Mm-hmm.
and visits. So think of it like that. It's like a funnel. You start with 10, you narrow it down to three because those three interviews seemed very interesting, and then you probed a little bit more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing in this case is yes, those interviews are great, but the way how Maria collected this interview was through testimonials, right? Testimonials are basically about storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
political act of telling a singular experience or a collection of interconnected related experiences with the hope of exposing an injustice that is both personal and systemic. These testimonials were the ones that were trying to like find out from these storytellings what really happened. What are the issues that made parental engagement the way it is right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty deep, which I
I
find,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, and it's definitely different from those style of research that we're used to, right? Like
Yes,
we
yes.
do oftentimes hear a lot more about quantitative data, number one. And also just from our past types of research too. It was also very different, wasn't it, John? Like what were the like we had like a research note, for example, like we did that, right? It was these are very different styles, and I think this is one of our first like very qualitative, isn't
First,
it?
very qualitative. Yeah, first,
Yeah.
very. So I think up to this point, we did like survey studies, right? When
Mhm.
we talked about how many, SLPs are really looking at evidence-based practices. They did a huge survey-based one. And I think after that, we talked about conceptual papers when we talked
Oh
about
yeah.
diversity, we talked about, right? And then we also, I think it was a lot more conceptual, and now we're going into this empirical data.
Yeah.
Trans
No, wait, so it's like translanguaging and discredit, those are all like conceptual papers.
Those were all conceptual papers, if you think about it. Yeah.
Uh,
And then IDEA, let's see, from what I understand, IDEA was also, when we talked about the IDEA and the power differential, it was an ethnographic data from a large suburban school district.
oh yeah, that's right. They did an
Right.
ethnographic. But like this one feels different for because this is qualitative data, but she's using ethnographic interviews.
So ethnographic interviews in terms of testimonials,
Mhm.
that's the difference here. Testimonials are basically storytelling.
So
It's a
what was the ethnographic interviewing in the other one?
the ethnographic interviewing in the IDEA and the power differential study was looking at large suburban school district. They explore equity implications associated from preschool, kindergarten to sociodemographically diverse school district. So it was much more zoomed out perspective. Like what is reoccurring about this school district and how are the families being like situated?
But it
Here,
wasn't like interviews of like people. I think
let-
they interviewed people. How would they have found
actually,
that answer if like they, right?
okay, let me see. Let me look up the paper right now.
I
Okay.
think that they did. I think that because they couldn't have done an ethnographic interviewing without having interviewed.
Okay. Pause. This is not an ethnographic interview.
Oh, it was
It's
not.
ethnography.
Oh, okay. So, John, this is like a really important
Okay.
detail. Okay.
Methods. Methods, everyone.
Okay.
This is very different. Ethnography is basically field note data.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right. That's right. That's what they did. Field notes.
Field work. So
Yes.
they get it,
Observations.
they approximate so it said for the IDEA paper, they did a comparative ethnography.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Conducted in a large northeastern state in 2011 to 2012 academic year. So they did not look at family stories. They looked at the school district in general.
They did
Okay.
observations, I remember, right?
That's what
Like
I'm
they were,
saying. Yeah.
yeah, they were going into meetings, listening in on what
IP
they
meeting. Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
like all of that. But in this case, it's an ethnographic interview.
Yeah.
So that's why it has
Semi-structured.
like
Yeah.
storytelling
Yeah.
involved
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Got it.
More like
And that's why,
semi-structured.
yeah,
Mhm.
and that's also why like this paper feels so much more personable, right? Because you're getting a peek into people's lives, like and
Mhm.
the details of their lives, right?
Yeah.
Of what they're carrying. Whereas like in the last one was just it was just ethnography. So it was just kind of very like, this is what I saw, this is what was said.
This
This is
is this
like
is
what
what
we
they
surmise.
determined in the IEP meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it is, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was different. It didn't feel as personable.
Yes, yes. And
Uh-huh.
it's also like how the school is operating. So there is no storytelling. It's like this school in this district in their IEP meetings, this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
More like a report based kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's more about stories, details of what's happening in their lives. Um, yeah, so that's why I find this work a little bit more like very valuable because these are lived experiences that are being shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, testimonials, really the life story, basically storytelling, if I'm using layman's term. And from those stories that Maria was through interviews, through what they got, she analyzed them into like themes, right? What am I hearing? What are some of the reoccurring notions from these like 10 interviews and narrowed it down to three. Okay. Seems
Mm-hmm.
like those three were like very like I was able to find like I wanted to follow up. So think of those as follow-up interviews because this is what I found that was so interesting from those interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, where was I in terms of those?
So
Interestingly, yes.
Oh,
Sarah,
wait.
I see
What were you
something.
saying? No, I thought we were at the methods section here.
We are at the method.
Okay, yeah.
We're at the method section. So yeah, so data shared here, one of those three interview sessions. And we have the demographics, right? We have a lot of Spanish speaking families, they're married, right? Kids, they're mostly in primary schools. And interestingly, they have their time in the US are about from 10 years to about 12 years. So they've
Hmm.
been here for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have children, 1 to 2 kids with IEPs there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them from those families, we have one kid with learning disability, one kid with autism, and one kid with speech and language impairment.
Okay.
So how they did the data analysis was very interesting. So of course they were audio recorded and transcribed and translated because they were done in Spanish, right? The
Mm-hmm.
resulting data was interpreted using thematic and narrative analysis. So themes, what are the common, common findings or the common things that are always popping up? That would be called thematic analysis. And narrative analysis is really looking into what is being said here, right? And then they were coded and interpreted with guidance of the thematic and structural analysis. After comparing the audio recordings and the transcriptions and listening for accuracy, ensuring rounds of analysis were guided by different purposes. So basically, the first round, I hear the interview, maybe I write it down, what I hear. Second time around, I hear something else, I pick up something else. Third time, I listen to the same thing and I pick up something else. That's how she analyzed the data that was being
Mm.
collected. Okay. More information of these rounds will be discussed. I mean, it's there. You're welcome to read it. I'm not going to discuss about that right now, but I want to talk about the top themes that were evidence
Mm-hmm.
and the themes that weren't really talked about. So the research question was basically what are the motherings experiences of Spanish speaking Latinx mothers of emergent bilinguals children labeled as disabled? And the second question is what values, perspectives, and ideologies do mothers hold about bilingualism and disabilities, and how are those reflected in the lives at home and at schools? And out of those 5 interviews, these are the top reoccurring topics that she found: immigration,
Mm-hmm.
marital woes, and physical health. Those are the top themes that came out from these testimonials, right? The themes that were not discussed of those 5 interviews was relationship with schools, child's disability, bilingualism, or issues relating to language learning and communication. The irony here is that a lot of the times when we read ASHA articles or SLP related articles, the themes that wasn't discussed by the parents are the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
But the themes that these parents brought up, we don't really focus on that. Immigration, marital woes, physical health. I don't think I have ever read a paper that focused on specifically for family and immigration in an ASHA journal.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read anything about marital woes so far in the ASHA journals. Physical health, in the case of like aphasia and neurological issues, I haven't really seen one for school-based and specifically family members.
I think that like we haven't seen them because we're not looking to allow them to say whatever. We're not doing enough perspective journalism, right? Like we're not taking a lot of like doing this qualitative data, right? It's not a very often used tool as a methods.
In our specifically in our field. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Maria is also not an SLP. Like this
Yes.
paper is not coming from like an ASHA journal or anything. Like what journal is this coming from, John?
This journal is from the Journal of Critical Studies of Communication and Disability.
So this is part of like that broader like disability studies, right? And
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
um
Disability, power, the power differentials and sociolinguistics or ratiolinguistics.
this is discrit discret, right?
Kind of like discret, yes. Kind of
Mhm.
like discret. Yeah.
She the Well, I don't know if we should. Do you want to just start talking about what those three things are, and then we can talk about the
Yeah,
intersections and
absolutely.
stuff?
Let's definitely
Okay.
do it. I mean,
Yeah.
Sarah, you also are knowledgeable of this article as well. Please feel free to join. Please feel free
No,
to. I'm opening to share the wealth.
no, yeah, yeah, no, no. The reason why I want to mention that is
Yeah.
because, like, I think if you're living within these intersections, like, you're typically not just bilingual, right? Like, you have a culture that is part of that bilingualism, right? You're bicultural, really, right? And so I think that, like, immigration is a big part of that story, right? And I think that when so at the time of this written report, when was this written? It was 2020?
I let me see. When I look at
Oh, this one is from 2024, but I don't think she wrote it at that time.
no, she wrote it. I think if I look at her positionality, I feel like she was still doing her PhD work.
Yeah, this is like earlier. I do feel like also, like, this was accepted into this journal at 2024, but this paper was around um for longer. And when I think about immigration at this time, it was during when we were seeing a lot of deportation. Right. And she does talk about it in the journal too, like, that this was a fear of a lot of the families. And at the time, I was also working in the Bay. And that was one of the things that, like, when I would invite families to come into IEP meetings or invite families to come in and, like, pick something up for their kid, like, they were concerned about getting deported. And then of hearing stories of, like, oh, like, I know somebody who went to work and then, like, got picked up by ICE,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a huge
Yeah.
ICE concern in New York City too. There was, like, ICE, like, in specific neighborhood in Queens, right?
Mhm.
In the corner, just, like, picking everybody up. So it really was a big concern at that time of doing immigration. But I do feel like in general, immigration status is so huge for families who are on, like, green cards, right? Work
Absolutely.
visas,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is something that I don't think a lot of people even just generally talk about. Um, so John, like, and I'm sure, like, your experience, your own lived experiences too about it is, like, it's not easy just to even get like, get citizenship,
Yeah.
like, even on a work visa or even with the green card, right? Like, like, sometimes you're, like, you're on a visitor visa and then you're trying to apply for a green card, and, like, all of these things, like, require a level of, like, money, right? It also requires a level of, like, because you need to pay for a lawyer to be doing all of this.
Mhm.
It's not something that, like, especially if you don't speak the language, you're not going to know how to navigate that system.
Yeah.
And so it is, like, a big concern for a lot of families to even get it. And sometimes people don't get it for, like, 6 years, right? Plus 6 plus years, like 10 years. Like, you're really waiting on this visa to come through.
Yeah.
It's a big part of
It's a
people's
big part.
lives.
And
Mhm.
also immigration status also equals income, this
Mhm.
financial stability because of our, what your ideal job, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you know, those are specifically, you need to have a US citizenship, you got to have a green card for that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you know, you're working the weekends, you're working more into a job position that requires you to work evenings or early in the mornings. It's very unstable in terms of what type of occupation you have because of your immigration status. That's what I think so far.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think a work visa too. If you're on a work visa, in order to even get a work visa, you need a sponsor, somebody who's going to sponsor
Exactly.
that work visa, right? And so that's not a lot of positions to begin with. So you
Exactly.
could actually be, like, a doctor in your, like, native country, but then just because you're here, you need to know if they can sponsor you for a work
Yes.
visa, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
even with that sponsorship with the work visa, you need to have full-time status, right? And so it really limits you, and it really just very difficult to get just all around. And it is a really huge part of, like, a lot of people's immigration story too. right? Like, how did my family get to America? Like, what was it that, and we could really go deep in it about like our, we really could, right? Like, we can go really deep about like how America does this, but we're not going to get into it. And, but I do want to say it is a huge part of our story.
It is. And when you're situating that right now, it's basically immigration equals income, immigration equals livelihood,
Privilege.
right?
Yeah.
Livelihood, privilege, right? Your child's disability, it goes into the backseat because our family need to survive in this country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
We want to be in the, we need to stay in this country right now,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
um, it's like, what is a priority right now, right? Like,
yeah.
what's the priority at this time?
What is it? What is it that these families need? And I think a lot of SLPs are really I don't blame the SLPs. I blame the how SLPs are being trained.
Mm,
I'm not blaming the service providers. I'm blaming how these service providers are trained to think that we're always missing that step, right? Because we are so obsessed. I'm just gonna be real honest. We're so obsessed with treatment, assessment that we forget like these kids
people.
these kids have families and these families have bigger and better, like bigger, more important things to
Hmm.
center first, which is immigration, well-being, physical health, right? And if we have families, absolutely marital woes, right? And I think Maria Cioé Peña did a really great job as service providers, special education teachers, that this is what's happening outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that there was like this, so there was immigration and the marital woes being like, husband was working all hours, was not able to be like a partner in like caregiving, right?
Right.
And so like I think one of the mothers of the three moms was saying like I feel like I'm locked in my room, like just being locked in the room, and then it went into like how um but then like on the weekend she could go out, but then if she didn't, but then her husband would come home and he would be drunk, right? And like
Yeah.
she would be locked in her home too, right? And so like that is also very common, right? This intergenerational trauma that could occur because of like, how does all of this fit together? And like you're kind of like looking into some of your own personal like mental health concerns, fit, and then it goes into like physical health concerns, right? So like what is their access into medical care, right? Like how are they getting access to all of that? um so yeah, I found this like a really good article because it really went in very intimate details and it also felt very familiar, right? Like did it,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, like it was very intimate but also very feeling very familiar. And I just really enjoyed reading about it and how like, and I found it very interesting that like despite the research questions, it just went into detail. Like a lot of the mothers were going to detail about their actual problems. Like
Yes.
like the
Yes.
question was like, how do you feel about your child with a disability? Like, what do you think about the bilingualism? And then like they're going into this own there. Here's these are the real problems, right? And so it's kind of like low priority for them right now, right? Um, and like one of the things, the question is why? Why is like what makes them feel like it's a low priority, right?
And I think of this as like, what are the foundational needs these families need first before
Hmm.
addressing the disability part, before addressing the educational part, right? So like they probably need um immigration status, financial status, access to medical care, access to basic needs,
Hmm.
maybe providing, having like a family social worker to address some of the marital situation. I don't know. I mean, it's not my place to say what these families will need, but having those services accessible, I think those needs to be addressed first as a family unit, and then they can go intimately about actually once I have this fire figured out, then I'll address the disability part, then I'll address the bilingual part.
You know, it like kind of reminds me of like my mom in some ways. Okay, because I know this is like not about me, but like when you think about like therapy, for example, right? It's like
Mm-mm.
first of all, my parents don't even understand what therapy is. They think it's only for people who like are like have like very deep mental health concerns. Like they're thinking about it like you need to be really sick or like to go have therapy. They don't look at it the way that we do, which is
Yes,
like
yes, yes,
everybody
yes.
should just get therapy just because it's nice to have like conversation and talk things through and be reflective, right? Like in a non-biased way. Like that's not what they're thinking. They think like you need medication. Like this is so that's number one. That's what my mom thinks, right?
My mom thinks like things like that too. So it's
It-
very like medical, like you must be not well.
yeah, yeah.
Symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But I'm
Like
like,
you
but
need to get on pills,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, but that's like not how Americans think about therapy at all, right? Like, especially nowadays. Like you can just get a therapist like online now and stuff.
Yes, yes. And
So
you can express your emotions.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's fine, right? And so, but secondly, it does remind me of my parents in the sense where, like, my mom does feel like, that kind of therapy that I described, right? She's like, that's only for people who have like no problems. Like, so in her mind, right? Like, what is she thinking? Like, again, my mother is like an immigrated here. Like, she had to like knowing, like, you come to this country not knowing English, right? And so like she's like building up her family and all of these things, and she's like raising me and my brother. And like what she's saying is essentially like all of these other things that you're talking about that you get access to, that's like luxury. That's for people who can like have the time. But really, like that's what my mom calls it, right? Like 먹고 살고, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Like
Yes,
you need
yes.
to be eating and living. Like that's what's important right now. You don't even need to pay the bills, okay? Right? So it's like all those other things that you get to have is like privilege. Like I don't have that privilege right now. And so like I feel like thinking like that when I'm reading this paper, it's like dude, yeah, like my son, like my child with a disability is very important to me. Like bilingualism is very important to me. But like right now, this is what's going on. And these are
Mm,
my current concerns. And,
right.
thinking about all of that is almost like a privilege to get the opportunity
To center my kid first.
to center my kid. But
Yeah,
also she does go into it a little bit more, right? Like not that it's a privilege to center my kid, but like out of everything right now, they're the least worried because, right? And it was like, right? Like it was because being in school where there's a team of people who know him, where there's a team of people who are working with him, he's good. He's stable, right? Remember, I think that's what it's called in
yeah.
the article, right? It was like stability, a welcome reprieve, right? Like it was like the view was like we don't have to feel worried. We don't have to, I don't have that concern. A, because I have a lot more things to worry about, but also B, being like he has a team of these the teachers and stuff. And it also makes you start thinking about like how do they view teachers and how do they view school? Right? Like that's about the Latinx mothers.
Yes, specifically. And I think that that also is also evident in another colleagues of, De Leon, De Leon et
Mhm.
al. When they did the Latinx mother interview, is that teachers, they give ultimate decision making. They will just agree, right? And knowing that they have the SLP on board, the special ed teacher, the school psych on board, like when they come to an IEP meeting, it's a group of people versus one parent. So
Mhm.
when they come and listen to all these things about how they're doing in speech, how they're doing in OT, they're with school psych, when they do their academic assessment, you feel like there are so many people working with my kid. I feel okay.
Yeah. It's stable. It actually
Yeah.
makes you feel like good, right? To some degree, right? Where you're like, he's such in a good, safe
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah. So schools are kind of seen as like they're gonna take care of my kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot.
And there's also an education difference too, right? Like the belief that like all of these educators are also very well educated,
Yeah.
right? So I think like in the article she like talks about it where she's like there's like social capital, like they don't feel like they have the social capital to even like, so despite IDEA being like no, the parents need to be centered and the parents need to be a part of it, like how do the parents currently feel is like, well, we don't have social capital here. You know more than I do, right? And so I trust that. And that also kind of just like, because as a mother, I feel that way a little bit too, right? Because in my last episode, everybody knows I had all
Right.
the problems with the school, right? And then I moved school districts, and then
Mm,
now they're in a school where like I don't feel worried. Now it's like one less thing on my plate right now, where like I was so worried where I didn't think my kids were gonna read. Like, right? Remember, I was like, this is bad, right? Like I wasn't paying attention or something, And then, but now that we moved this to a new school, the new school is taking care of it, and I see evidence of it, and now it's like I feel relief, and it's one less worry for me to have to worry about. So it's just like not even in my head anymore, right? Like I'm gonna focus on all the other things, right? And so that kind of like shows just like how Latinx mothers in this case at the very least is like kind of thinking too. I feel like that's the sentiment, right?
I definitely think that. I definitely agree with you on that sense. It's like there are so many things outside of school that's happening, maybe my job, maybe, something that that I need to pay financially, social class, economically, job related. There's a lot of things that's going around here. And I know that when I come to IEP meetings, I have this team of people that who said they're going to write all these goals, provide these services, right? We'll provide every 3 year, they're going to assess. I feel good.
I feel like a lot of parents feel that way even when they're not like Latinx mothers.
I
Like I think
think.
monolingual, like
Mhm.
European, you know, families would think that way too, right? Because when you're in IEP meetings, like these are professionals are like experts,
Yeah.
and are giving me recommendation and feedback, right? Like
Yes.
I think a lot of people feel like they don't have social, like I think that's what she calls it, social capital
Capital,
here,
the
right?
social capital.
But I think that, yeah, like if you are living within these intersections, so like immigration, so race, class, sex, right? Like if you're in these intersections and like depending on where you land, you might feel even lesser social, like
Correct.
capital in the situation,
Right.
right? Like the
Yeah.
capital, social capital is kind of like on a spectrum too, right? Like when
Mm.
I show up to an IEP meeting as a parent, I have a lot of social capital because I know all of this information. There's back end, right? But I have like neighbors who don't know anything, but they do speak like English just fine. They have high education and they don't feel that much social capital because they don't feel like they know about education.
They do talk, this article does talk about that, the disconnection between, right? The language use and the disconnection between like home and school and some of the languages, the verbiages that they use in the school district, totally disconnected, totally feels foreign. They don't, so
Hmm.
parents feel lost, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also, and if parents are currently coming to this place saying, I have all these people and I feel good, and if this team isn't making, an appropriate recommendation, the parents are just gonna go with it.
And it makes me really feel concerned about that too,
Yeah.
right? Because when I think about power differentials, right? Because I'm just
Mm.
like, well, then like essentially these IEP teams, they're not they're held accountable, but if you know that like they're held accountable by FAPE and IDEA, right? But the family needs to know that it's what's happening in order to know to file, right? Like, right? Like you are putting a lot of trust into a team and the team probably knows that too. So like you get what I mean, right?
I
Like
totally know what you
go
mean.
things
Yes.
can go badly when that happens, right? It's like
Yes.
this kind of like
Yes.
double-edged sword to some degree, right? Like it's like as a team member, I feel like less frightened when I come to a meeting. I feel like I could be more honest and um, but simultaneously it's like concerning because like what will happen if the family mom, the parent doesn't know and is just complying? Like,
And also like family, if the IEP team knows, right, the family is trusting and the case manager is gonna be like, that family's really good. It's okay. Like it's already like shifting into that mentality compared to this family's lawyering up. So everybody like
hell yeah.
110% on this kid.
Yeah, yeah. And I
So
also see if you could see it being taken advantage of,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Right. As we see oftentimes with anyone within the intersections of immigration, right? Like of language
Yeah,
barriers, of
yeah,
like opportunity barriers, or like policy barriers. So when you see all of these things like coming in together, like you can be very easily taken advantage of and you wouldn't
absolutely,
even know
absolutely.
it, right? And
It's
so
they're at a very vulnerable stage. Yes, we have a team of people who will be there for this kid, but the quality of service delivery, appropriate recommendations, very questionable, right?
very
Yeah.
questionable. Um, But I also do think that, like, as a service provider, you should be aware of this, right? Like, this is the type of stuff that, like, we need to be advocating for our families, right? Like, knowing that these are families who have Latinx, like, how can I create a space where they're like feeling included somehow, right? And like, also knowing, so like sometimes I go to meetings with interpreters and I feel like the interpreter doesn't know these words
They
themselves,
don't. They
right? Like,
don't. They
right,
don't.
because it's not very common words, right? And so it's like, how are we making sure that the family is like fully aware of like what is happening here, what their rights are, right? And then I think in the last episode we did also talk about that too, about like how we give everybody procedural safeguards, and that thing is like coded language to begin with. Like, can you imagine that, like, interpret, like, do you know what I'm saying, like in
Yeah.
Spanish, like I'm just like, God, like these things are, just because now it's in Spanish doesn't mean that it's any less coded. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's gonna be still like coded language, right? Where I'm like, how is this helpful to anyone, right? And so just like things to think about. And also like I really like the way that she talked about intersectionality, like Kimberly Kenshaw's like
Yes. Yes.
1981,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right?
So intersectionality comes play a part, I think, because these families have multiple identities and it kind of like comes together, right? So they call it the integrated lives, one role impacts the other, right? So me as a mom, I'm an immigrant, I'm a person who speaks languages other than English, and I also have a mother of a child with a disability. So all these like these separate avenues of identities are all like coming together to make this person who this person is, right? And they're saying that I think what you said, Sarah, the race, class, gender, really just as that comes together, those identity of race, class, gender, family relation, parental roles, they're all kind of make up like, are you more at a vulnerable state or are you more at an advantageous state altogether? It's not this one thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that what was really notable in that piece was how like mothers felt like they wanted to meet other people within those same intersections, right?
Yes.
That
Yes.
like there was like a community, like connection, right? And like that is often where I think, at least, right? Especially when it comes to like the Korean community, like you find that at the church, right? Like you can find like this is like also like where that's another layer of like intersection, right? Like religion can,
Religion. Yes. 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 Yes.
right? Religion can
Religion.
provide this like community and this identity, right? Um and so I just feel like, what's really very often not discussed is about Not only discussion, but practice, right? Because, we've been SLPs for a long time. And
Mhm.
like, we often see, yes, we use an interpreter, or like, yes, we made this like report bilingual. Yes, like we try to include the families. Yes, we try to do like making sure that they have, you know, their home language is still being honored, right? We use books that were like reflective of their culture. But the one piece we don't do is help them connect with other families.
You're right.
We really don't, right? Like I've there was only one time in my I think my time, my career one, right? But like where like we did have like a Spanish mom like for AAC users. We did that one time.
Wow.
And we did. It was a good novel idea. We thought it would be great. Let's connect the families, blah blah. But it was really hard because like we could host the event. It was virtual. It was a virtual event. We
Uh-huh.
held them virtually so that it could be accessible, right? Like
Yes.
wherever and then we actually sent out surveys prior to as well, so that we picked a time that worked for everybody. And then we would like do posed questions and they would answer and all of that. But I realized that like it's really difficult when you're not sharing the same background, right? It's difficult when you have an interpreter interpreting everything. Like, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
yes.
It like
Yes.
kind
Exactly.
of loses connection to some.
The one who's leading the group doesn't share the same identity as the family members. Absolutely. You lose that connection or the willingness to open up,
Yeah.
right?
And it felt a little awkward too, that we were like just in this room and it just didn't work, I felt like, right? But it's like we don't really talk about how to create these spaces or like
Mm.
how, and then like I found out later that there was like a group of I forgot. It wasn't Spanish. I think it was Urdu speakers, right?
Okay.
And then like the moms have connected and they made their own little WhatsApp
Oh,
like
support. Yeah.
conversation support group for themselves. Like they found community. But it was super organic, right? Like they found each other in the
Right.
classes and the classrooms and be so I just feel like, we don't really know how to support we don't really know how to support
But then here's the
bilingual
thing,
moms
like,
in
but
these intersections.
my question is, I think compared, like you brought these two great vignettes. One was kind of like hosted by a person who was outside of the community. One was just grassroots, just happened, you know, without the intervention of somebody outside of the community.
Hmm.
And I think there's a difference on how people will react if this was a district hosted event or like an SLP person hosted event compared to, yeah, let me get that mom. Or yeah, let me add her on here. The space that it's being created is more authentic. They're able to share more, but they're probably going to be more formal here with, I think AAC is da 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 da. Or compared to the other group, they're like, this AAC sucks. I like da da da. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's more like personable. It's more, so there is, you know, but
But
it's
I think like there can be events hosted by the district that just allows connection, right? Like today is like family day. It will have like like anybody's invited, but we still like it's an event where like families could connect. Do you know what I mean?
right, right.
Like just
So
a connection party, like,
I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it's like I wonder, or like we're like, oh, families in who have kids in our like special education classrooms, for example, right? Or like, is that too like exclusionary? I don't know. But like you come to our hosted event, we're gonna serve food, we're
Yeah.
gonna answer all your questions, whatever. But if you're hosting it, there's gonna be other families there too, and then you can connect,
Yeah. Yeah. So
right?
that connection can happen at this district hosted event.
Correct, right? And also like if you do it at nighttime or something like that, right? Then
Yes,
like,
families need to be like parents are able need to come. So if you're
yeah,
during like work time, that's not ideal.
that's not ideal.
Not ideal.
Like even parent trainings, like you know how like you want to no, but I'm just saying
I
I have
know.
these families. Okay, so I have a Calendly, and like for some reason my Calendly is not up. I don't know. Like it's
Yes.
updated, but I don't know. Somehow parents still somehow able to book it like past my working hours. But I
Uh-huh.
booked that thing for like 8 to 3:30, and they're like, what the hell? I need at minimum for it to start at 3:30, right? Because they're like, and
Right.
these are families who are just actually like, they're not, they're working like normal hours, like 9 to 5, right? And so you see how like it's such a barrier when you don't have options for consult that is not going to be past certain hours in which they're already working.
Right.
Um,
And I don't feel, and also some SLPs may not feel like it's their obligated duty to work beyond their
Correct.
time,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't think I'm allowed to either, John, right? Like, I
I
don't
know.
think your union says that you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing that. So it's not only just about like, oh, because I don't want to do it, but it's like it can become a problem if
Yeah.
I do it after hours,
Yeah.
right? Should anybody find out?
Right, right, right.
It's one thing if it was like you just worked, like you wrote your evaluation report as we all do after hours, right? That's like something maybe you just do by yourself and nobody's gonna really find out about it. But like something like parent called you after hours, like I don't think that they people would like that. And so I guess like if a district was hosting an event that was like at nighttime, allowed for more people to attend, and
Mm-hmm.
they could also like use that opportunity to also meet like families, like not only families, but like their children's like friends.
True. True.
Like I feel like a huge part of like my job as a mother is like identifying friendships for my daughter. Cause she'll come
Mhm.
home and be like, yo, I want to have a play date. Right. And I'm like, well, I don't really know the mom. Like, so it's like, then I have to then call the teacher and be like, can you give this mom my number? And then the teacher then has to navigate that
Have to
out.
navigate that out.
Right. And so then they can be friendship for like after school hours. So how can we create and foster friendship for even our children? Like that's a level of privilege too,
It is. It is
where
what.
it's like, yeah, whereas like I have the time to do that, I can also negotiate the time to do that. So how do we close out these barriers for families
Mhm.
so they
Love.
can meet?
Yeah.
Well, that was it, John.
I like it. We need to start reading more papers like this. I mean, I do know some papers that are more about like this type of empirical data where they're like really talking about stories and talking about very important stuff. Um, I am in love with this type of research method, you know,
Mhm.
lived experiences. We're working with humans, we're working with families, we're working with people and their lives. We're not just quantifiable numbers. That's one thing that I always come to this conclusion is that people aren't just numbers. Yeah.
Mhm. And really taking into like consideration of like their real experiences, right? I really
Absolutely.
love the perspectives piece to it. And I just really love Maria. I just really love Maria. She's so great. Like and just the
We need to give
perspective.
her a shout out when
I
we
know. We gotta give her
yeah,
a shout out. Be like,
yeah.
just
We
such a
need to give her
fan, just such a fan. Like her whole, like all the vibes, right? Like,
yes.
like her positionality, where she's coming from. Like you could feel it even
Yeah.
through the paper, like
Through the paper.
hair.
The
Yeah.
full intimacy.
Yes. Yes.
Human through the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her care for it and her her own lived experience that's in it. You know. Well, anyway, thanks for sharing this paper, John.
All
Really,
right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
thank you, John. And until next time. Bye, John.
Bye, Sarah.